My name is Paula Thompson, and today's presentation is derived from my master's thesis, The New Normal, Islam Countering Violent Extremism and the Creation of Muslim Subjects in America. And so basically, for this part of the talk, I will show what CVE looks like in Muslim American communities, or CVE, Countering Violent Extremism, aka Disciplining of Muslims. So here's a little background on countering violent extremism and CVE. Since the War on Terror, we've used as a starting point, and nobody's really presented on CVE yet. In August 2011, the White House released Empowering Local Partners to Prevent Violent Extremism in the United States. It was the first national strategy to prevent violent extremism domestically. The underlying premise of the approach to counter violent extremism in the United States basically is that, one, communities provide the solution to violent extremism, and two, CVE efforts are best pursued at a local level, tailored to local dynamics where local officials continue to build relationships within their communities through established community policing and community outreach mechanisms. CVE encompasses the preventative aspects of counterterrorism, as well as interventions to undermine the attraction of extremist movements and ideologies that seek to promote violence. CVE efforts include building awareness, including briefings on the drivers and indicators of radicalization, which Horia spoke about, and recruitment to violence, countering extremist narratives, directly addressing the countering violent extremist recruitment narratives, such as encouraging civil society-led counter initiatives online, and emphasizing community-led intervention, quote, empowering community efforts to disrupt the radicalization process before an individual engages in community activity, unquote. That's their perspective, not mine. According to the Brookings Institute, this is based on the idea that localized interventions diminish the allure of violent extremism and prevent people from joining the cause. In the first place, which is the key to getting ahead of the threat, again, we aren't actually talking about the crimes, we're talking about a space that occurs before anything has happened, or getting ahead of the threat, or preemptive, as Bush liked to use that term. Expanding notions of who should do this and how it is essentially going to be done is what the Countering Violent Extremism agenda is all about. The federal government seems to prefer to portray itself as a facilitator, a convener, and a source of research and findings rather than the direct driver of CVE, which they actually are. So we see a flat line on Google Trends in 2011 when this piece was released by the White House. And just before the White House's 3-day summit on countering violent extremism in February of 2015, we see a spike in the CVE trend, and it's concentrated basically in the US. The summit brought together local, federal, and international leaders to discuss steps for the United States and its partners to develop community-oriented approaches, to counter hateful extremist ideologies that radicalize, recruit, or incite to violence, including 3 CVE pilot programs in Boston, Los Angeles, and Minneapolis, St. Paul. And here we see Syria's Sheikh Mohammed Al-Yaqoubi with the beard, Jihad Turko Bayan Institute, sitting next to LAPD's Michael Downey, Salam El-Mariati from Muslim Public Affairs Council, among other law enforcement, state and government officials. And actually, these are important to me because they're in California where I live. Okay, I already read that part, sorry about that. I will now launch into broad ranges of examples of CVE online and on the ground in portions of the Muslim community and some of the language that is utilized in these programs. So I'm beginning here with the expected, which is the Secretary of Homeland Security's Jay Johnson meeting with the Minneapolis Somali community for the quarterly roundtable and CREX, C-R-E-X. The Department of Justice explains that the U.S. government outreach in various cities across the country with law enforcement, public safety officials, and community includes CVE tools, such as the Community Awareness Briefing, or the CAB, as well as the Community Resilience Exercise, which is the CREX, which is a half-day tabletop exercise designed to improve communication between law enforcement and communities and to share ideas on best how to build community resilience. DHS's Office for Civil Rights and Civil Liberties and the NCTC have worked with the U.S. Attorney's Office and other local partners to implement this exercise, which involves an unfolding scenario of possible violent extremist activities in and across the United States. As part of their community engagement, the government also holds roundtables with community groups. And here in early December 2015, Secretary of Homeland Security Jay Johnson held a community engagement roundtable at the Dulles All Area Muslim Society Center in Sterling, Virginia. And that was headed by Imam Muhammad Magid. And he's behind Jay Johnson there on mic. The event was attended by area community leaders and some faraway ones, as we see by the presence of Salam al-Mariyati again, from the president of Muslim Public Affairs Council in Los Angeles. He's down on the bottom right. We just saw him the first picture, along with law enforcement officials, local and federal elected officials, and even diverse interfaith leaders. And we see a few Sikh partners there, as well as scouts. Also, please notice that there are American Muslims Condemn Terrorism signs in the background. Secretary Johnson convened the meeting in response to the attacks in San Bernardino in 2015. And so just as Horea mentioned that certain attacks, bring about responses, we have the same thing, which is basically law enforcement and officials go into the society or Muslim community, and then they tell them, these are the expectations, and we want to remind you, and this is your participation. Again, as I said, they capitalize on the circumstances and the uptick in vilification of American Muslims, emphasizing the importance of partnerships with American Muslim communities to counter violent extremism in the current threat environment, and they have their flags waving down on the right, sadly. In June 2015, Secretary of Jay Johnson is here addressing the Muslim Student Association. It's their national leadership retreat in Henryville, Pennsylvania, which included 40 student leaders from colleges across the U.S. to discuss the department's continued efforts to expand partnerships with community organizations and state and local officials on civil rights and civil liberties to safeguard the communities. Johnson emphasized the importance for collaboration between local communities and law enforcement to ensure hometown security. Students, as they were quoted, expressed their commitment to working with the government to keep America safe, keeping in mind that when it was revealed about the NYPD spying, it included MSAs along the East Coast reaching as far away as in Pennsylvania. I also wanted to add that the MSA West Coast has denounced participation in CVE, and they have done a significant amount of pushback. Here we have the less spoken about CVE model, the Montgomery model in Maryland, fusing Sufism and a diverse faith community working group with other stakeholders, the World Organization for Research and Education, which is WORD, was born out of Sufi leader Hisham Kabani's effort to move Sufism more into the center of mainstream Muslim American landscape. He claimed prior to 9/11 that the majority of Muslim mosques in America were radicalized, and thus he and his mentee, Hidayah Mir Ahmadi, she is the president of WORD, became advocates for pushing Islam in the Muslim community, also positing the peaceful nature of Sufism as an antidote for the other forms of Islam, which they deemed radical. In the photo, we see that the police chief is overseeing Rabia Chowdhury, a senior CVE consultant and Muslim Leadership Initiative advocate, speaking about understanding the ISIS threat to the homeland at WORD, which serves a CVE strategy to educate community representatives in a controlled setting about existing messages, propaganda and recruitment efforts, and the harm this supposedly will do to children. This slide displays a WORD event dubbed Are Our Children Being Recruited?, which appeals to the discourse that social media and other media platforms are being used to recruit individuals of Muslim faith to join extremist groups and encourages individuals to engage in violence, and therefore the proposed solution is to educate communities about ways to protect children from being recruited. Here, Mir Ahmadi is actually addressing the Senate Committee on Homeland Security on formulating next steps for U.S. policy. So this isn't just something being undertaken in individual mosques. It has a much bigger face than that. In a 2015 HuffPo article, Jawed Kaleem revealed that YouTube reached out to certain American Muslim circles, inviting them to the company's 41,000 square foot production facility in Los Angeles, including a free flight, 2 nights in a hotel, based on the premise that YouTube needed them to provide counter-narratives near strong enough to oppose ISIS's, according to Victoria Grand, YouTube's top policy director. YouTube wanted to do more than remove videos from promoting terrorism, and instead preferred to drown out the Islamic State with better messages, reasonable messages. We see familiar faces in this photo, such as MPAC representatives, the organization that created Muslim community-led initiative for Los Angeles, a civil rights advocate for Council on American Relations, a popular online personality, and a popular imam. In January of 2015, as we see in the slide, 70 Muslims arrived at a closed-door meeting at YouTube's studio for a summit to change the discourse. They comprised a who's who of imams, scholars, activists, Muslim vloggers, and entertainers from across the U.S. For 9 hours, experts, many of them Muslims, briefed participants and brainstormed on how to combat online extremism. Imams were paired with entertainers along with community advocates such as CARE, and they seated with a few of YouTube's non-Muslim power users who peppered the crowd and gave tips on how to build up millions of subscribers with popular culture commentary. Mimicking a tech startup camp, attendees broke into small groups to debate what technologies and strategies work best. The language utilized by Muslim participants is vague. It doesn't talk about CVE, but it's more like hanging out and having fun. YouTube representatives declined to speak on the record, however, to the HuffPo about its anti-extremism programs, and said the company preferred to promote people who create videos instead. Again, they are looking for that distance or that third-partyism. According to several participants in the program, the company has also shied away from talking about its work in the area in order to avoid seeming too close to government-led efforts. In February, YouTube officials were also among several tech representatives who also attended the White House's first Summit on Countering Violent Extremism, where the government announced a series of anti-extremism tech camps to come. A YouTube representative indicated the anti-extremism workshops were newer and more were planned for cities across Europe. Here we go, Korea, they're coming for you. And Asia, where the company partners with non-governmental organizations in countries including Indonesia and Asia. Here's another example. It appears that Google, Facebook, and Twitter joined the online messaging via Amplify Online hashtag and social messaging workshops for Muslim artists, activists, and business owners in Kansas City. According to the photo, participants learned how to put threat into proper perspective, and they gave a shout out to participation organizers such as Rabia Chowdhury again. We saw her back in Word's video, along with tech companies such as Google, Facebook, and Twitter. They're all listed right there. Here we have one of my favorites, which is Capitalism and the Marketplace of Ideas via CVE startups, such as that by Shahed Amenallah, former senior advisor of technology at the U.S. State Department, and Quentin Wortorowitz, who occupied 2 senior positions at the White House and has also delivered counter-radicalization initiatives for the intelligence community and the Department of State, as well as being a senior consultant on CVE in the UK. Co-founder Amanullah of Affinis Labs summed up their work thusly: when people are looking or when they are curious about ISIS or trying to join ISIS, there are multiple different reasons, right? Behind each of those reasons is something that a business could go after to try to satisfy that need. This is a marketplace. ISIS is going after the marketplace with its own vision, and we need to join and go after them in the same marketplace. Recently, a popular Muslim personality, Wajahat Ali, there in the end, joined them as their creative director. I especially like the quote at the bottom about the ecosystem by Werktowitz. No single prototype is a silver bullet to stop ISIS radicalization, but it's the ecosystem that we're building by running these hackathons globally and connecting the networks all the time. Some of their projects include Pentor, a Muslim-type Tinder app for matching mentors with mentees in online safe spaces with the community for young people to seek information from reliable sources. Marhaba is an app that connects students in traditional Islamic scholarship to learn about sex, relationships, and marriage and intimacy. Another is geared specifically toward reaching adolescents and young adults to discourage ISIS recruitment, such as the app Come Back to Us. There is also an app about countering messaging and counter-narratives, which is a strategy of the White House's empowering local partners to prevent violent extremism in the United States piece, which is a government-approved empowerment narrative of the Muslim community. These projects are born out of Affinis Labs hackathons and incubation projects. Here, Wajahat Ali from Affinis Labs posts about a recent Bay Area hackathon. One of the words they use is also hate, no hate, which of course we don't agree to having hate, but it's definitely a CVE or extremism program that kind of merge the two together, which is in line with Boston's CVE model of increasing awareness regarding the impact of hate speech and networking with those countering violent extremism, hate, and hate. Here we see the tech companies sponsoring the event again on hate. One way CVE is approached by another name, and we see that we have Facebook and Google there. Now we move from the hackathon to the Muslim hackathon, also referred to as mobilizing Muslim talent to solve global challenges. In partnership with the US-based CVE startup Affinis Labs, again, a Muslim-specific hackathon was held called a hackathon, playing on the Arabic word for haq, meaning truth. It was a 3-day event in April 2015 in Abu Dhabi that brought together technology, entertainment, Islamic scholarship, and other disciplines to create what it claims are cutting-edge solutions for promoting peace. Participants, many of them from the Muslim American community, worked on new social media and digital initiatives. Teams competed to get their ideas in front of judges, in front of both live audiences and an online audience. And the winning team would receive prize and incubation support from Affinis Labs. It has been described as an American Idol final round meets countering violent extremism. That's really what the newspaper said. Not only have Muslims been tasked with CVE, but forthcoming hackathons, they say, will mobilize Muslim talent to solve global challenges such as climate change, human trafficking, and the refugee crisis. And when I gave this speech back in February, I went after Dr. Bazian, and he pointed out that these are not Muslim community issues that Muslim communities and Muslims need to be solving. And of course, it went as far as climate change now that Muslims are responsible for.
I apologize.
And this photo, Quentin Werktowitz from Affinis Labs and formerly from the US government, is giving a shout out to 80-year-old Mauritanian Sheikh Abdullah bin Baya for the hackathon, or the hackathon, I should say, if I can say it correctly. The bottom photo has popular imams such as Sheikh Hamza Yusuf from Zaytuna College, Abdullah Antepli of Duke Divinity School, and he is also an MLI participant, along with other figures from the Muslim community, down at the bottom. Imams and scholars have also been called upon to assist in public debates over ideological and social psychological underpinnings of contemporary violent extremism, to condemn terrorism, and to counter narratives and promote those narratives for wide reach. Below, Sheikh bin Baya is addressing the UN on violent extremism. There. Another term when religion is involved in CVE is peace missions or peace caravans, and here is Sheikh bin Baya promoting the concept of peace in Islam. This photo, this one. This photo reveals that Sheikh bin Baya has even invited CVE Summit American delegation to his home for lunch. It's extending good old Muslim hospitality in his home in Mauritania. Here, Hamza Yosef of Zaytuna College also quotes Zaytuna co-founder Imam Zaid Shaker on the need to push back and reclaim Islam from extremists. That includes a forthcoming intellectual response via social media by imams and scholars to counter ISIS's interpretation of Quran. Here, Imam Suhaib Webb is trolling ISIS as part of CBE to not only supposedly frustrate and humiliate denizens of the online extremist forums, but for the Imam and others to discourage impressionable youth from becoming terrorists, similar to the U.S. State Department's sponsored Project Viral Peace, which sought to occupy virtual space that extremists were perceived to fill, one exchange at a time, with logic, humor, satire, and religious arguments through strategic trolling. Due to his addition on the ISIS hit list, Webb is taking a break from social media, as advised by authorities he just announced this past week. Then we have organizations again, such as Muslim Public Affairs, who are targeting youth. Again, they were the creator of CBE Safe Spaces, a supposedly Muslim-led initiative in LA that's been put into the formal CBE framework. Taking from the Boston CBE outline of problems and solutions, U.S. policy and events around the globe can frustrate and anger at times youth, influence some to think that there is no effective alternative other than to express grievances or solidarity through the use of violence. Therefore, it is necessary to create internship and programs across government agencies, and we can see here that they are also going to YouTube, like the last group of adults. Provide education about effective approaches to activism with social impact and subject that matters. Provide support for youth engagement, empowerment, and active programs. Again, that ties back into what empowerment is acceptable by the government, not what as a community wants. And the summit, yeah, I said that already. It includes the YouTube space so that Muslim youth can also learn to amplify the government-approved counter-narrative. This is a youth leadership event in Texas with a former DHS member and Homeland Security Advisory Council there. Under the banner of Islam, terrorism, and new media, to clarify the role of Muslim youth in the current geopolitical crisis that holds not only Muslim adults collectively charged to resolve, but also now Muslim children. Mixed space serves as a third space outside of mosques, based on the concept of that the un-mosque people are more often tolerant and question-friendly. Here is an advertisement for an intervention strategy to raise awareness about supposed ISIS recruiting in the community and ways to intervene. We also have individuals that participate outside of just major groups, periphery groups, and small groups. Now the average Muslim, or average Joe, which is a play average Muhammad, right? Muhammad, down there in the bottom, is a husband and father, a manager at a convenience store, and the creator of the Average Muhammad YouTube cartoon, presenting counter-radicalization messages geared towards youth 8 to 16. The project uses cartoons to present Islamic messages that counter the radical ideology preached by ISIL and Al-Shabaab and other terrorist groups approaching the youth in a media format. Ahmed collaborates with local religious leaders to craft messages in a way that relays Islamic ideas while dispelling ISIL's ideology. He received a $5,000 grant from a de-radicalization organization and some help from some members at USC to create episodes, and has been getting tips from YouTube on how to go viral. ISIS is portrayed here as destructive to humans, shrines, and relics, and therefore the group gives them a thumbs down. Here we have a recent effort to move CBE towards public policy, as I wrap up, public health, as a proactive and positive paradigm through non-coercive means in a pre-criminal space beyond traditional and prosecutorial approaches, so they say. This is being put forth by START, National Consortium for the Study of Terrorism, and Responses to Terrorism in the University of Maryland. This piece came out April 5th. We see the psychiatrist with the gray hair there, Stephen Wayne. here he focused on a Arab and Muslim organization in Anaheim by April 11th. So that last piece came out April 5th. By April 11th, they had already visited Chicago and were in Anaheim, California, for what was called a Safe Spaces Focus Group facilitated by MPAC's El-Mariati again. It is said to be a community-led, and it's from this, so the Safe Spaces, again, I go back to was the LA framework, the community-led initiative, and they were discussing ways to go forward since it had part 1, part 2, and now they're moving away from that entirely, saying it was a mistake, and moving towards saying we're going to work on public health. Let's see here. Right here, so on the topic of Muslims and public health, I wanted to leave this quote. It is important to note that this primary target group of the ideological response is not the terrorists, but the majority of Muslims. The aim is to provide them with a correct understanding of the religion that is relevant to the contemporary context and current priorities, so that they will not be easily influenced by the terrorist propaganda. The majority of Muslims should be immunized against the viral threat, extremist ideologies that are freely disseminated through the internet. And again, we can connect this back to the times of the Chinese racial exclusion in the United States and the way that they were framed as public health threats, which allowed public health officials extended rights, ways to delve into their life, to analyze, to create files. And that's the end of my presentation. Thank you very much.